Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining this webinar. In this webinar, you're going to learn how to create and publish podcasts. So I am your facilitator. I'm Malia Hoffman. I'm a professor at Cal State Fullerton, and you can pretty much find me anywhere on the social media at Optimus Malia. I use Twitter with that handle, Voxer. I even have a Yahoo email address. And if you add a 22 after it, there's a Gmail address that I can be reached at. So why podcasts? Well, it's super easy to reach people in really hard places. So I have been a lover of podcasts for years. I am known to start many sentences with, "So I was listening to this podcast," and then lead into whatever it is that I want to share with my audience. My students know that I am a lover of podcasts, and it is a great way to create some content, archive that content, and then it will last forever if you want it to. So this is an infographic. I'll share the resource at the end of the presentation, but it just states the statistics and facts about podcast users. So 51% of the population, the US population, have listened to podcasts. So that's just over half. That's a lot. And about 49% of those listen to them at home, and 22% listen in the car. So if you're like me, if there's dead air, I'm listening to a podcast. I'm pretty much always consuming information. And so I range from entertainment to the news to things about education. And so it's just a really great way to just always be learning when you can't necessarily have a book in your hand. And these stats are from 2019. So 80% of people listen to the entire episode. So several listen to 7 shows per week. And you can see that once you hook them in, they're going to listen to every episode. There's definitely podcasts that I listen to that I cannot wait until the next episode comes out. So, and then the nice thing about podcasts is that you can always just pick up where you leave off. So it's kind of like shorter versions of books on tape or audiobooks and things like that. So many listeners listen to at least seven shows per week, which is one a day, right? 56% of men listen to podcasts, 44% of women. And you can see the graph along the bottom right there that it is growing over time. So these stats, again, are from 2019, so just a couple of years ago. But it is a steady increase over time. And so here's a very dense slide on how you can get started. So first, what you want to do is you need to define your topic. So what it is that is going to hook people in, keep people interested. What do you want to share? Okay, what are you an expert about? Think about who your audience would be. Who do you want to listen to this? If you're an educator, you might want to pair it to your students. If you're a designer, you might want to create something that would appeal to the people that would be consuming your content. Are you going to do this collaboratively, or are you going to do this by yourself? Is it going to be just you, or are you going to do interviews? And then what's a sustainable schedule for you? And then you need to make it successful, right? So you have to get started with those initial topics. But making it successful, you need to get the word out. So whether you push it through social media, get your friends to listen to it, your colleagues, and then to make it pretty and appealing before you publish it, you're going to want to consider getting some album art and make sure that you abide by copyright for that. Maybe some intro music, so you can tap into some of your musically inclined friends, or you can create something yourself. And that's where I say enlist help where needed. Okay, you don't have to do all of these things on your own. And then you need to consider what tools are available. Okay, you don't have to go out and furnish a room as an entire podcasting studio. You don't have to do that right away. What you can do is just look at the equipment that you have. And you might, as you get going, you might want to buy more and add tools, and we'll get into that. And then what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to subscribe or create an account with an RSS host. And then after you do that, you'll consider where you want to publish it. Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, maybe just your website, maybe in your course management system. And then also, where are you going to want to record? Is there a quiet place where you're not going to be interrupted, where there's not going to be a lot of noise for you to record those things? So, as I mentioned, define your topic. What's your niche? Okay? Right now, there are 2.2 million podcasts published on Spotify, and that was current as of April 2021. Okay, there are 500,000 posted on Apple, and Stitcher is the up-and-coming podcast source because it's cross-platform, and most listeners range between the ages of 18 and 34. So think about, with that many podcasts out there right now in the world, what are you going to contribute that's going to be different than those 2.2 million or those 500,000? All you need is one person to listen and get your message out, and then someone will pass it on to someone else. Like I said, I always start sentences with, I was listening to this podcast. And then people will often ask, share that podcast with me. So once you get people hooked, it'll catch on. So you don't have to have 1,000 users, listeners within the first month. You can do that slow rollout. Okay, so for your content, once you get started, you're going to need to think about how you're going to outline your content for each episode. Are you someone who's very comfortable just winging it? Or are you someone who needs to have very specific notes, make a script possibly? But I highly recommend do not read it, because you can always tell if someone's reading it, unless you're a trained actress or actor. So, but maybe the first couple of times you'll want to bullet point some topics. And the good thing about it is that you're not doing it live, unless that's something you decide to do later on, but you can always go back and edit it as you need to. Okay, so now if you are choosing to interview people, you can create a list of questions. So in my podcast that I do with my colleague, we usually get a bio from them. And then based on that bio, we will come up with a list of about 10 questions, and that we found keeps them going for about 45 minutes. That's a good time frame for a podcast. And you can choose to share those questions with them beforehand, or you can surprise them. But like I said, if anything surprises them and they don't want to answer those can always be edited. So don't worry about it. And don't be afraid to do retakes. Don't be afraid to cut things out, ask the question over, ask it in a different way. But also there is some sort of authenticity with the realness of a person and the realness of a voice and the way someone's mannerisms are and the stutters and those types of things. If you're someone who uses verbal interrupters like ah or ums, you'll probably need to practice. But of course, listen to your product once you finish it. Once you get the hang of it, you don't necessarily need to listen to all of them, but you'll need to listen to it so that way you can give yourself a solid self-assessment. So that way you know what you can do better, what you want to change, and also enlist some good friends and colleagues to listen to it and give you some honest feedback. And you might want to try recording in different rooms, because some rooms are going to have a lot more acoustics than others. You might want to adjust if needed. Try your office, try your living room, maybe throw down a rug. I've heard people record in closets with rugs and pillows up against the walls. So whatever you need, okay? And when you get going, try to maintain a consistent schedule so people can count on your new episodes. Like I mentioned in the earlier slides, most people will listen to 7 podcasts a week, and most listen to the entire episode and will listen to all the episodes published by a certain publisher. So if you consistently release your episodes on Sundays, allow them to count on that. We're going to talk about tools for a minute. So think about what you have. Right now, I am using my MacBook Air. I do have an external microphone, which honestly, I spent a lot of money on it and I don't love it. So I just use the built-in microphone on my laptop, and that seems to work really well, especially if I'm video conferencing with my interviewees. That microphone doesn't allow me to capture the sound coming out of my computer. It only captures my sound, which is frustrating to me. So, like I said, maybe practice interviewing some of your students, your kids, your nieces and nephews, your colleagues, just to get a handle on the technology and how you want to do it. You don't have to publish those, but it's just a good way to practice, right? So you can use computer or tablet. I have found that tablets are pretty tough to create podcasts on. I like it better on a computer on my laptop, but you certainly can do it. And like I mentioned, the built-in microphones are pretty good nowadays. And you might want to use maybe your headset if you have one. But I have also found that when people are moving around, it catches a lot of just the movement and the sound and the brushing noises on that microphone. So again, test that out, listen to it, see what you come up with. You can use earbuds with mics too. Those are a little bit better than I think the ones that are like the headset with the microphones, personally, what I like to listen to. And then recorders. So currently right now, and this is not on my list, but I am using Camtasia. Now that is a paid for tool software. So if you do feel like spending a little bit of money on it, you can do that. But if you're a Mac person, you can use GarageBand. And that's what I've been using for my podcasts for a couple of years now. And I love it. I started with Audacity, which is cross-platform, which I have transitioned away from. I haven't used it in a while, but that is a good cross-platform one. There are some other tools like QuickTime, which will do a screencast. I haven't loved QuickTime. I've used it only a couple of times. And you can do simple screen recordings on your phones, but I think sometimes those don't necessarily take audio with it. But this depends now if you want to do a vidcast or just a podcast. So if you want video included with it, like I'm doing right now, or if you just care about the audio. So that's totally up to you. And you can also purchase advanced equipment, and you'll probably need to create some recording subscriptions. If you want a place to host your videos, to back them up, you might need to look into that. Microphones, if that's something you want. If you're getting really into it, if you're really good with sound. I'm not that good with sound, so I don't test it out and play with it a lot, which I probably could get better at. But like I mentioned, you will need a subscription to the RSS feed to host it. I use rss.com. There are others. And it's pretty inexpensive, but that's how you get it published. And from there, you'll need to connect to other streaming services. And by other streaming services, I mean Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, anywhere else that you want to publish it. So when you're promoting your product, you want it to look professional. I have listened to podcasts that I was surprised were published. I have listened to podcasts that sound very professional that are done by amateurs like myself. But what you want to do is you want to make sure that you create some original album art. So I have a high school student who created our album art for us, for our podcast. And it's just very simple, but it has our name on it in an image. And then you also want to create some intro and exit music. It's nice to add that element to it. I again enlisted a high school student who created a sound bite on GarageBand, and it's only 15 seconds, 30 seconds. And I add it at the beginning and the end of all of our podcasts. And like I mentioned several times, use students, family, friends, and then, of course, add their name to it. Give them attribution. And then publish it. You'll want to promote it with social media, but publish where your audience is. Like I mentioned, if your audience is in that 18 to 34-year-old age, you will want to probably use Stitcher. If you have a huge Apple presence, Apple Podcasts. Spotify is cross-platform, so it's a safe one, but it doesn't cost you more to add it to more subscription places. It's just the RSS feed that costs you money. Of course, if you have a learning management system or course management system, post it in there. You can do that without having to pay for an RSS host. If you have a website and you maintain that, you can, of course, upload it to that. But also, if you publish it in those services that I mentioned, you can connect it to your website as well. But of course, put it in multiple platforms to get the widest audience that you possibly can. And promote it at all stages. So in your creation stage, take some pictures, post it on your social media, post a story. You can post little sound bits live. Post you creating it. Promote the prior to the launch date. And of course, when you publish it, you want to promote all of those things. Feedback is so very important. So make sure that you're getting feedback from honest people, from strangers, from family, from friends, from your students, from your listeners. Get feedback anywhere you can. And also ask them what they would like to hear, what they would like to change, what future topics they might want to hear about. And I'll give you some ideas. So as I mentioned throughout, here are some of my recommended resources. RSS.com is what I use to host the podcast, and that allows me to connect to Spotify podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and I used GarageBand personally to record my podcasts. Audacity is another tool. That sums it up, but if you want to know more or you want to learn more, you can find me at Twitter at Optimus Malia. That is my Fullerton email address if you want to reach out to me in that way. These are hyperlinked resources, and I will put a link to this presentation. It's a Google slide presentation in the notes and the section on YouTube where this is hosted, so you can access the presentation directly. But the podcast infographic is linked there. Some of the articles that helped inform my presentation today, the best podcast recording software, Stitcher Podcasting Report, which is where some of those statistics came from, RSS.com, Stitcher, Apple, and Spotify. So if you are wanting to publish your podcasts on those sites, those links will take you directly to setting up an account and getting yourself started. These slides, this template is from Slides Carnival, and the photographs are from Unsplash. Again, those are linked right there. So that concludes my presentation. I hope to hear from you, and hopefully you learned something. Take care.